We've officially gone off the rails.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the chance to go and experience an actual prison? Not as an inmate, but like.
No, juvie, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, there's a really amazing organization called Defy Ventures, DEFY. I think it's like defyventures.org. It's a nonprofit. And they bring people in to the prisons to do mentorship with the inmates. And they don't call them inmates. They call them EITs, Entrepreneurs in Training. And
That's amazing.
They have a beautiful message because they say one of the slogans for the program is transform your hustle.
Okay.
Because these people, they have hustle.
Oh, 100%.
We just need to rechannel it into something that's, legal.
Yeah.
Right? But the interesting thing is I went and I did a weekend at Pelican Bay, which is the Supermax, only Supermax state prison in California.
Yeah.
I didn't know when I signed up that I was going to be going to that prison.
Almost like Rikers. Jesus Christ.
So what they told me, I was like, is it really that bad? And they said, just so you know, if you murder somebody in another prison, you get sent to Pelican Bay. Like that's, so it's hardcore. So we go and there's like 30 of us as mentors. There's 150 of the inmates / EITs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a part of this like 9-month program where they actually get a certificate from Baylor University at the end for like entrepreneurship. So they learn it. It's amazing, but they have to be on their best behavior. They have to like show up and do all the work. It's a lot of stuff. So we're there for 2 full days and I had the most amazing experience getting to meet those guys. But I also had, I think my biggest takeaway, and this is way before 13th even came out, but it really solidified it when I watched 13th afterwards, was how fucked up the prison system is. It was like the stories I heard from the men there, and then my experiences with the correctional officers and hearing directly from their mouth the way they talk about things in there.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is completely fucked. They are set up to lose. And we did this exercise called On the Line, and there's some people who have done it online where you can see it as well, but they had 2 pieces of tape that were all the way down the entire length of the gym. We were all in a gym together. Mm-hmm. So it was like the correctional officers are up top with the shotguns and stuff and everything. And there's like, they're making sure to protect us because it is a dangerous environment. They had just had a big riot there like 6 months earlier. And 4 of the prison guards almost were killed and a lot of stuff going on there. So they put this tape down, and the tape is probably like, I'd say maybe a foot apart from each other, right? It's about a foot gap between the 2 pieces of tape. And they have all the EITs, all the inmates on one side, and then all the mentors, all the volunteers on the other side. And then the facilitator starts calling out life circumstances and says, if this applies to you, stay on the line, keep your feet on the line. If it doesn't, take 5 steps back. And they started reading these things out. And what we started seeing was that we were not much different than the people that were in this prison.
Right.
And calling out things like, one or both of my parents were an alcoholic. And you see people on the line. I've done things before that I should be in jail for, but I never got caught.
Yeah.
People like all this stuff that you're like, wow, I was one decision or one being caught away from being on the same path as you.
Yeah.
And then we met some of these guys in there, which was just like baffled the crap out of me.
Yeah.
There was a guy that has been in and out of some kind of prison since he was 6 years old.
Jesus.
He stole a bike at 6. The man is now 45 years old. He's been in jail aggregate 25 to 30 years. And 12 of those years were in solitary.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're the only country in the world that incarcerates children and then wonder why they feel like they're not set up to win going forward.
And then you become dependent off the camaraderie that you feel when you go to prison.
It's some sense of family. It's some sense of normalcy. Dude,
have you watched the show on Netflix? The guy who was convicted wrongly in the UK, who travels to the craziest prisons in...
No.
Oh my God, you have to see it. It's called The Craziest Prisons in the World. Okay. He goes to Sao Paulo and he goes to Norway, and it's just like showing like how different it is. Even though like our prison system is pretty fucked up, they show you at like certain prisons, there are no like separate rooms. They're just in a yard, and they have to go through the trash, and they basically like are collecting like the plastic and like selling and like getting the food that people left over in the trash to eat.
What?
It's insane.
How does that happen?
Because like, I have no idea, but like people are doing like petty crimes, and like they're putting them in a prison system. You have to watch it. It's on Netflix.
I'm gonna check it out.
It's going to blow your mind. But it's interesting that you share that story, because I feel like we only know what we see in the media.
Right.
Like, for instance, I had a conversation with 2 guys who were in jail, 2 Black dudes. I was talking to them, and they were like, yeah, I mean, like, prison was cool. Like, shit, we made friends with the correction officers, and we was eating Chick-fil-A. We had cell phones and shit. And for me, I was like, no. And they're like, absolutely. They were eating Chick-fil-A. They had a phone. They had an iPad. They were watching all the new shows.
Wow.
And not to like glamorize prison, but there's so much that we have no idea about that goes behind the scenes. And I'm just like, wow, like we know nothing.
It's a whole ecosystem. It's like how Google has their campus.
Yeah.
It's its own earth.
Dude.
It's its own planet.
It's crazy.
It's insane though. And it just seeing kind of what they do to them and like, you know, they have to, in order to stay in this amazing program where they get to learn all these things, they have to also keep their prison job, right? They have an actual prison job. And then I was having lunch with a couple of the inmates and they were telling me a story and they had to like whisper it so that the correctional officer don't hear. He's like, they said, listen, they know that if we don't go to our job, we can't stay in this program. Mm-hmm. So they will schedule our job time during the class time. If they don't go to class, they get kicked out of the program. If they don't get to the job, they're kicked out of the program. So the correctional officers are actually doing things to get them kicked out of the program. And I was like, okay, I believe you, but maybe it's like just a couple of them. It's like a few bad apples. And then I start hearing stories from all of them and they're like, this program is fucking bullshit. These guys, they're not going to get any better. This is all bullshit. And they don't believe in anything. And I'm like,
the correctional officers. Wow.
Like, and so for me, and this is going to sound really like crazy and over the top, but it's really what I feel. If we're not truly trying to rehabilitate people,
what are we doing?
Then when they get arrested, we should kill them.
Yeah.
Because if we don't want to ever have them be productive citizens, then why are we
keeping them? We're keeping them for labor though.
And this is why the 13th was such an eye-opening thing, was to see all that happening. It's insane. I think prison reform is here's the thing. People get in these arguments where I'll be like, prison reform is such a big thing. And they're like, yeah, but what about the environment? And what about this? It's like, it's a both and. It's not an either or, right? Whatever you believe in and whatever the thing you want to attach to, you're not saying everything else doesn't matter or whatever. Yeah. But like, I think that's a big one for me. And I want to think about that. And people that are worried about the environment, I'm so happy they're worried about the environment.
Right.
You take that one on.
Exactly.
You, right. So that's a thing for me. Man.
There was a big thing that came out recently because Kanye West is running for president. And he said that he wanted to repeal the 13th Amendment. But what he meant was, if you read the 13th Amendment, it says that you can't have slaves unless they're prisoners, basically. Like there's a loophole. Right. That's why we're able to have cheap labor with prisoners, is from that loophole. So what he was saying was we should change that.
Right.
Which, I mean, it does seem messed up. And we were talking earlier about Kamala Harris and how she was denying DNA testing so that these prisoners could get exonerated from their cases because there was crazy wildfires in California and they needed the cheap labor to put out these fires. So
yeah, and that they talk about that in the 13th, is that as soon as the slaves were freed, the law went into effect that it basically allowed them to be put back into prison for the most minor things. For it wasn't panhandling. What is it's just such a I don't even remember what the word is, but it's like the most minor thing in the world that like you would maybe get like a $20 citation if you were a white person. Yeah. And you would go back to jail. And then once you're in jail, that's what the 13th Amendment loophole was. Right. Well, if you're a prisoner, then we still get to have free labor.
Yeah. And they have like the 3 strikes rule, obviously, too. So, so it's like something I wouldn't get in trouble for. But if you already had the other charges, then you go to jail for like 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is.
Crack and coke. They had the same thing with crack and coke.
Yeah.
The amount of, like, you could have, what was it, for the same amount of crack and coke, you had 10 times longer of a sentence for having the possession of the crack versus the coke.
Literally.
So what kind of things were you teaching the prisoners? Because I don't want to get too off topic.
Yeah.
Because I think this is fascinating that you are brave enough to go into prisons and teach people that. Do they really want to be taught, or they're just over it? Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of people like that are just like, who cares? Like, I'm in jail. Like, and what does this guy know?
Yeah.
Right.
And I was terrified going in, but it was less, I wasn't as terrified. Well, I wasn't as terrified for my physical safety at first until I got there and somebody else that was a mentor was like, oh, how many times have you done this? I'm like, this is my first. And they're like, and you picked Pelican Bay for your first one? I'm like, yo, I don't know. I just signed up and they just sent me here. So I got a little scared once they said that.
Yeah.
But my whole thing was like, before I went, my commitment as much as possible was going to be, so another part of Defy that they talk about, which I really love, is they say, imagine if you were only remembered for the worst thing you ever did, right? And I've never murdered anybody, and I've never raped anybody. Yeah. I've never stolen anything of major value. And as a little kid, I stole a bunch of candy bars. I used to work at CVS, and I would like tuck my pants into my shoes at the end of the night, and then just walk down the aisles, start throwing
sliding,
candy, just all day. But nothing major. And still, whatever is the worst thing I've ever done, I do not want to be remembered just for that. No. And so going into this whole experience, my commitment to myself was that I was going to try to see the next version of them, not the X version of them. That was my whole thing. So what we were doing, it sounds super cliche, like, oh, I learned more from them than they learned from me. But it's true. Like, so we're sitting there, and part of what we were doing is coaching around entrepreneurship stuff. So when we went in, we were there all day Saturday with the people that were graduating from the program. So they were about to do a business plan, like competition, and like present whatever their business was. And then Sunday was the brand new people coming in. So we got to work with the graduates, and then we got to work with the brand new people. And so me and another guy were coaching this guy around his business plan and everything else. He was presenting it to us, and he wanted to create a food truck that was based on his family's recipes. Like his family has amazing recipes of Mexican.
That's cute.
Right? It was amazing. And so he has this whole plan laid out of this is how much it's going to cost to buy a used food truck, and this is how much the refurb is going to be, and this is the cost of goods for the food and all this other stuff. And so the dude that I'm with that's doing the mentorship stuff, he goes, what website did you go to get all these numbers? And the guy says, oh no, we don't have internet. Like, well, so how did you get the numbers? He's like, oh, I wrote letters home to my family and said, can you please look up these different things and send it back to me? And I'm like, the number of excuses that I make in my life.
Oh my God.
With all the shit I have access to. And this guy's like, yeah, I had to write home. And he's like, and he's on it and he loves it. He's in it. Dude. And it just shows that like, when you want to focus on being resourceful, like the whole, like, what's your excuse folder is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I see people doing this thing. I'm like, oh, that's going in the what's your excuse folder for me. Because it's like, it's amazing to see that. So we did a lot of mentorship around kind of like how to position the companies and stuff like that. But the deeper conversations were conversations like that. And so then there was another guy that I was mentoring, and he shared the whole thing or whatever. And I'm just giving him feedback like, dude, this is amazing. This is great. Like, and I'm giving him little tweaks here and there. And then I see he's like, starts to get sad. And he was really happy to be in it and to be a part of this whole thing. And I asked him, so what's going on? Like, it seems like something shifted for you. Like you were really excited about this and all of a sudden you're not. He said, listen, a lot of the guys here are never getting out, right?
Yeah.
They're in here for life. He said, I am actually getting out fairly soon. And I feel guilty that, number one, I'm even in some business plan competition. And number two, that I'm going to go be able to live my life given how I hurt somebody else. And it's like, to think that these people are not humans, that nobody's condoning whatever they did. Yeah. But they still have emotional trauma from going through this. They're not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to serve my time and get out and go fuck around. Right. They're like, they are also traumatized. Yeah. And there's no support. There really is no support for them.